What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back from our long, depressing time.
Yay.
We're here. Rated M is back.
COVID.
COVID was
Corona.
a thing. Is a thing.
Tiger King.
There were so many different things that happened, of course, during the entire pandemic. I don't know, really how to go any farther, say anything more than what has already been said about COVID. We're going to just try to bring back the show as usual. We are so, it's been so long since we've been on the show that I don't really know how to carry it any further than it is. Ben, do you feel like it's a homecoming? Like, how are you feeling?
I feel as awkward as I always have, sitting in front of cameras, not in front of a webcam. So I guess it feels pretty similar. Talking to you, I always enjoy talking to you about video games. So
I gotta say, this is one of the most awkward intros I've ever had for the show. Because I'm just so out of practice with it. I'm so used to sitting in front of, my computer at home on Discord with you, doing the whole spiel when it kind of became a normal kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just felt weird. So now being here in the studio with the lights and the cameras and,
the direction.
The wonderful crew that are helping us create this amazing spectacle of a show.
Hey, it's production value.
It's going to take a little bit to get back in the...
It's better than my 720p Logitech, camera.
Yeah, and trying to figure out, network connectivity issues and you just dropped internet connection and the stream is awful and all of a sudden some
brings out all my flaws.
World news happens and then we get off and we're going back to living our miserable existence for those 9 months, 10 months, 11 months.
I wasn't going to see
12 months.
That darkly.
This is rated M for mature, Ben. We get dark on this show. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is Digital Chumps' very own video game news show, podcast, if you will. We posted Talking Heads kind of show. Of course, rated M for mature because we are doing kind of a condensed season, kind of mostly because COVID is still a thing, and it's kind of hard to get everybody's schedules together, and the crew only has so much time that they can actually be here to help us do these shows. We're doing a condensed season. Yeah. So each show is going to be a little bit different. We're not necessarily going to be doing as much news for this show. We're rather going to be talking about kind of the biggest things going on in gaming of that week. Not necessarily news, but maybe it's a topic that's been brought up.
Wasn't that what we were doing before?
It was kind of what we were doing before, but we kind of mixed it in with the news. It's more along the lines of, so this week was like the big news story that the Twitch leak with all the streamers and how much they're getting paid.
That happens today though, right?
That happened today. And so that's something that we could end up talking about, hey, does it really matter how much Twitch streamers are being paid? In my opinion, no.
Critical Role made the most though.
Critical Role did make the most.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But they got split between a lot of people probably.
They were averaging 250,000 viewers a stream every Thursday and then restreams and everything like that. It's insane. I love Critical Role, by the way.
I've only watched a couple episodes.
It's great. Yeah. It's wonderful.
I'm not a big D&D person. So.
Okay. I love D&D. Yeah. Naturally. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a very loose-ended show. We're kind of going to be talking about a bunch of different topics this season. Of course, this show specifically, we're going to be talking about Ben's Far Cry review. So Ben, let's just hop right on into it. This is Digital Chumps' very own Far Cry review. So Ben, you reviewed Far Cry 6,
I did.
which comes out tomorrow, which if you're listening to this today, it's out now. But the review, of course, came out yesterday if you're listening to this tomorrow. Ben, you have played it. I have also played it. I played it on Xbox. You played it on PS5.
Because those came out during the interim of us filming this.
Yes, that also came. Yeah, PS5 also came out. That feels like forever ago that the PS5 came out. Anyway.
A far cry from,
a far
times.
cry from today, yeah. You reviewed Far Cry 6. Mm-hmm. I, of course, also played it, but you wrote the review.
Yes.
Give us your review of the game.
Oh, my review.
Just a quick summary of your thoughts on Far Cry 6.
I think the big thing about Far Cry 6 that we would both agree on is that it is more Far Cry. I think anyone who expected anything different from that, I'm not sure what they were thinking. But Far Cry 6 goes from the American setting of Far Cry 5 to a Cuba-inspired Caribbean tropical region that is being controlled by Giancarlo Esposito, basically, Anton Castillo, a tyrannical dictator kind of guy. You're playing Danny Rojas, a freedom fighter who is trying to get a bunch of Libertad guerrillas together to topple the reign. You go to base camps, you go to checkpoints, you get an alligator with a gold tooth to kill people and get upgrades for better guns, better materials, so you can eventually, take out the bad guy. And I would say that is...
I mean, it is Far Cry.
Yeah.
It's just more Far Cry, which is kind of... and I'm seeing a lot of the criticism from a lot of different outlets and a lot of different people as well in terms of this, and this is kind of where I land. It is just more Far Cry.
It is more Far Cry.
I feel like the game is in dire need of a reboot. I think that after this game, because it is more of the same, where you're hunting animals, and you're going after the big bad guy who is this over-the-top, dramatic, evil figure that is just like, is it a little melodramatic in terms of how evil this character is at this point? You know what I mean?
Not comically.
Not comically.
This time around, though.
Just, it's almost, it's like it's almost taking itself too seriously of how evil this guy is, that you have to go take him down. I haven't finished the story yet. I will admit that.
Yeah.
It is a big game. And like most Ubisoft games, I don't know if you found yourself like this, getting distracted by all of the different side objectives to do. I found myself being pulled in many different directions.
Mm-hmm. I get distracted in Ubisoft games all the time because they are big open worlds, big maps full of checklists. And I know a lot of people, that's one of their main criticisms for, an Assassin's Creed or something like that. But I actually find a lot of comfort in those types of things because it is a big world full of things to do. You can see a map and you're like, well, do I want to do that? You can. You can spend all kinds of time in one region or island. And if you don't, dial down the difficulty and choose the golden path, narrative or something like that. I mean, even what Far Cry 4, that was the main campaign, was called the golden path because some people don't have the time to dedicate dozens and dozens of hours to these games, and they can just fly through the main story, see those scripted events that are in the narrative.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, from the very beginning, right? Because I knew I wasn't writing the review. It was more along the lines of I was kind of just appearing on this podcast to talk about my thoughts. I started off the game by starting and choosing the story mode.
Yeah.
Right? The non-challenging mode. Mostly because I kind of wanted this experience to be one of those big action movie kind of things, where I wanted to go in there and I just wanted to be able to take out all the enemy camps without much of a challenge because I wanted to feel like a badass.
Right.
Which I think is fair, and I'm glad that they threw that mode in this game, which I don't believe was in Far Cry 5, if I remember correctly. It could be.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time since I played that as well. But I really enjoyed that aspect of being able to go in and just blow through enemies. But again, and I know you find a lot of comfort in the sheer amount of content that's in the game, but I really feel had they shaved down at least some of the content, because there's some content in it that I felt was a little bit rehashed almost. The security checkpoints that you go in and you have to destroy is it really destroy one of the billboards to take it over?
No, you can destroy billboards and do different pieces to them, destroy that stuff, kill all the guards there, and it basically just sets it over.
Yeah.
The main point of the those checkpoints is if you're
Creamer.
driving a car fast past them, they're gonna ruin your car.
Yeah.
You're gonna slow down, and you're gonna have to fight some dudes.
That's what I
unless you're
mean.
on a horse.
Those kind of things, which I love the horses, by the way. The horses, I think, were a great addition to
Yes.
the traversal mechanics of the entire game. But those like checkpoints, I feel like they may not have needed to be in there because you already have the enemy base camps that you already go into and kind of liberate. I call them liberate those. That's pretty much what
Yeah,
you're doing.
that's basically what it is. Just like any of that.
I feel like just those security checkpoints could be thinned out a little bit. But hey,
Sure.
if you love Far Cry, you are going to love this game, right?
Yes, I think that. Well, if you love first-person shooters, if you love open-world games with a lot of freedom to do whatever you want, or if you love co-op,
Right.
you know, like silly co-op time with friends where you can, in a way, turn your brain off, and that's not like an indictment against the game. It's just a matter of fact. But I think I look at these like fall Ubisoft releases or like a Call of Duty or something like that, like these yearly or bi-yearly things, and I feel like some people would complain if there wasn't just a shitload of things to do in them. And I think an argument could be made that there's too much in them, but in a way they're easy to pepper the map with them.
Sure.
You don't have to do them, and it's easy enough to, I don't know, it's just like fun little distractions that ultimately do reward your character on an upgrade path.
I can see what you're saying about people being upset that if they kind of scaled back the content, but I honestly think it's almost one of those God of War situations
Okay.
to where people are going to be like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to like this new form of gameplay with like Far Cry.
Yeah.
Like if they're like, oh, I don't know if they ended up changing the formula and made it either more linear or whatever they ended up doing to change up how Far Cry operates.
Yeah.
I really feel like if you do it well, right? And I trust that the people who make the Far Cry games at Ubisoft know, and they probably have ideas of how to change up Far Cry, that if they implemented those ideas, I really feel like the audience would come with that.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's almost one of those ideas of people don't know what they want until you give it to them,
Right.
right?
It's true.
God of War, is the perfect example of that because it's like people, oh, I don't know if I missed the fixed camera and the hack and slash, the button mashing,
Yeah.
QTEs and all that other stuff. While those things are still kind of there, it's a more refined game.
They're evolved into
It's
a
an
modern
evolved,
taste.
exactly. And I feel like Far Cry needs kind of something. I don't know what that is. I'm not smart enough to suggest what that is because I think they have something on their hands, a franchise on their hands that is ripe for a new take on it. But that's just my thought on it.
Well, so when you, I think a few days ago, messaged me, we were talking about the game, and you said that it's in need of a reboot. I do feel like with Far Cry 6, we've gotten to that point where they can't really do much else with the game.
Right.
Like, where are they going to go from here that they haven't done, at least since Far Cry 3, checkpoints, revealing the map, like all these things. So I kind of thought about the Saints Row reboot. I haven't watched too much of that, but it seems to be a lot different in tone, what they're going for, and they're going for like a shift. I think...
Although, to be fair to Saints Row as well, it is going for a shift, but it is, at its core, still the same Saints Row game that we've seen before.
True. I think with
vibe.
Far Cry 6, it will be interesting if they try and maybe do more of like scripted, like a scripted open world, because you do have these, like when you go into an encampment, it's usually fenced in or like this big open area where you can go and scan all the enemies, do all this, and it's predictable in a way. But now you're going to get to the point where if you, I think, go back for a 7, even though I know like with this formula it's not the 7th entry, but Ubisoft does need to do like an Assassin's Creed Origin Odyssey kind of revamp on that. Like how do they do that? And again, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But the way I look at it is they need another Far Cry 3 moment where Far Cry 3 came out, and if you remember, it came out in December, like after all the Game of the Year stuff started coming out and people, but then reviewers got the code, like that week,
yeah.
and they were like, oh well, this should have been Game of the Year in 2011, 12. I can't remember exactly what year. But Far Cry 3 is an amazing game, right? And it really revolutionized what an open world kind of shooter can be.
Yeah.
And I think they need to capture that magic again, because I think at this point, it's like if you go pick up Far Cry 6, right? And I know, and I'm saying this as a Far Cry fan, like if you like Far Cry, you're going to enjoy this game.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I enjoyed this game. I'm not saying it's a bad game at all. Like, it is a good game.
Yes. An entertaining game.
It is an entertaining game.
Yeah.
My thing is, I couldn't find it to be an entertaining game for very long.
Okay.
Because I felt like I had done this all before.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I mean, you have. That's fair, yeah.
And it's not like, oh, the game's a DLC. It's not like that. It's not like that. It is a new game, and there is a new story. There is things to be engaged with. I'm just saying, in terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay, there's a lot of familiarity, and almost too much familiarity, to where I'm
That's
like,
fair.
oh, well, I guess I got to go here, and I guess I got to go there and liberate this point, and oh, well, I want to get this upgrade, so I better go find some resources to get this upgrade for this gun.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know how they change it. Far Cry 6, good game. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 9.
You gave it a 9.
And I know,
See, I don't agree. I don't agree with the score, but
That's
hey,
fine.
that is Digital Chumps'
But again,
score.
And I will make the argument. You gave Far Cry 5.
An 8.5.
Okay, you gave it an 8.5.
I did give Far Cry an 8.5.
And that was a factor in my thought process, because I actually played Far Cry New Dawn, which was that expansion.
See, I didn't play that one.
And I rated it. I think I gave it an 8.8.
Yeah.
And it's like,
So you think
I use yours as a metric because, like, again, like if
So
we're saying
it's-
better and an improvement, then
for a game like this, because it is so similar, I don't necessarily. If I was grading Far Cry 6,
yeah,
I would not give it a 9.
that's
I
fair.
would probably give it more of an 8. I might even lean towards an 8.5.
Yeah.
Right? Mostly because there are things that they have fixed that I do enjoy.
Yes.
Right? So from the get-go of the game, you have 3 weapon slots, which is awesome. Like, I hated before only having 1 weapon slot, and it's like, well, you have to go hunt this animal halfway across the map
Right.
to even be able to get a second weapon slot. I hated that. So the
That's
fact
fair.
that you have all 3 open, the new Supremo, which are pretty much ultimate abilities that you can upgrade and unlock as you play through the game, are awesome. I think they're really fun and chaotic.
Well, and some of those Supremo abilities, you actually, like you can load equipment
Yeah.
slots on them that you would have previously, in the previous games, used for like equipment
Yeah.
or ammo upgrades and stuff like that. So I think that they kind of navigated through that whole, like, let's go kill a bunch of animals and like
Right.
collect pelts and stuff like that.
Yeah, which is awesome. I love that they added that feature. I also really enjoyed Danny as a character.
Yes.
I think, who did you play? Did you play as the
Female
male?
Danny.
I did too.
I always play the female character.
I
in
played
Mario.
the female Danny. She is
Always
awesome.
a better voice actor.
It's always a better
Yeah.
voice actor. But she is awesome. She's badass.
Yes.
Has a lot of great dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and she's a really strong character. So I think, like, in terms of character building, Far Cry has always been very good.
Yes.
Giancarlo Esposito in this game as the
great.
villain is great.
Yeah. Well, he's a great actor.
He's a great actor. I do think they did write his character. He's a great actor. They did write his character a little bit too similarly to some of the other characters he's played in previous.
Yeah.
He's the character of now his name's slipping my mind.
Gustavo Fring.
Yeah. Well,
Breaking Bad.
it's a mix of Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad and Grand Moff Gideon from Mandalorian. It's like if you combine those 2 characters, that is what's his character's name in Far Cry? I can't remember.
Oh, Anton Castillo.
Yeah, Anton Castillo. Yeah, it is exactly that. So if you can imagine Giancarlo Esposito taking those 2 characters and combining them, that is his Far Cry 6 villain.
Yeah.
So he's a little bit more colorful. Like, he's a little bit more emotional, or empathetic, I guess.
Yeah. A little more sinister because he's not so bombastic and weird. He's not, like drugged out like Pagan Ben,
he's not drugged out or
too close to home. Joseph Seed, where it's like, oh, that person's a real American. In these days and age.
But in terms of like ranking the different villains, I don't think he comes close to Voss though. Voss is like top tier Far Cry villain. And then I think Joseph Seed is like next down. But then I would toss up probably Pagan Ben and Carlo Antio. Is it Carlos Antio? What's his name?
Carlos Antio?
Man, I always forget his name. Like I can't remember the character's name at all.
I don't know. You're supposed to be staring at the camera, by the way.
Sorry, my bad.
You're just looking at me the whole time.
I'm just looking at you, but
drinking up my eyes and everything.
Sorry, nobody ever said, do we have like 5 minutes? Like, just looking at the camera, okay.
Because you're looking at me the whole time while they're trying to capture you.
I'm just trying to.
You're too busy thinking about Far Cry.
I'm too busy thinking about Far Cry to be looking at the camera. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, if we only have a few more minutes left here, I think how many more minutes do we have? We have 5 minutes. 4 minutes. We have 4 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm trying to keep the track good. Again,
it's hard. I think
it's
it
all
is hard
very
to do off the cuff reviewing of a game, especially big fall games, because guess what? In a couple weeks we have Guardians of the Galaxy. In like a month we have Call of Duty, Battlefield, Back 4 Bloods in a few weeks. Far Cry, I think, is the first big game of the fall, just to get us back on track. And I enjoyed it. I know that you said you would have probably rated it lower, and I think that's fair. And I know the big wealth of criticism lobbied at the game is that it is too similar to previous Far Cries. And I think most people who are fine with that, most people are like, that's all I want. I want more Far Cry. I want to, as I started my review, it's like, I had a great time going into a thing with a compound bow, hearing like the squelch of an arrow going through a dude's head, and it's just fun. And I thought the tone was funny. It was weird. They did a lot of that shift, but it didn't feel out of hand as it has. Like, I think it's gone progressively like weirder intentionally and trying to do extreme things.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, that is the Far Cry review from Ben Sheen. That's all we have to say about that. Of course, you can go read Ben's review over at digitalchumps.com. You did give it a 9.
Yeah.
I would recommend it if you're a Far Cry fan. If you're not a Far Cry fan,
if you haven't played a Far Cry game,
if you haven't played a Far Cry game, then perfect. Jump in, you'll love it. But like,
buy the season pass. It comes with Blood Dragon.
If you're kind of burnt out on it, maybe wait.
Wait until a reboot.
Wait till a reboot.
Wait for it to be on sale.
Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to give a quick little thought here. I played a few hours today of the Battlefield beta.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give a quick thought. Next week, we're really going to dive into the Battlefield beta now since I'll have pretty much all weekend to play it. But I played a few hours of it today. Talk about a game that is confused with itself.
Okay.
I love Battlefield, but my first few games playing today, my first few hours playing, there's only one map in the beta.
Yeah.
It changes some things up that I am not a fan of, that I'll explain next week once I get my hands a little bit more wet with it. But we will talk about it next week. It's an interesting game. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I'm going to say for it right now because I'm very conflicted on Battlefield. And we talked about Far Cry for a solid 20 minutes, and we could talk about it for a few more hours. So
I definitely could.
I'm ready to wrap up this show because that's all I have. Because I'm
flustered. So good.
I'm flustered now.
Big Daddy, I'm so proud of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Of course, you can go check us out at digitalchumps.com. I've been Alex Tudor for Ben Sheen. We will see you next week.